Hello, everyone. How are you? I'm Shanieri Eze with Eze Family Health Center. I'm joined tonight with Lisa Hugh of Southern Maryland, Dietitian. We are going to talk tonight about the basics of nutrition. Lisa, I know this has been, I think, our second or third time, maybe even more than that, that we've done our nutrition and diet presentations on various topics in the past. So I'm really excited to have you back. Thanks so much for coming.
Thank you for having me. I love doing these presentations. I think it's a lot of fun and it's nice to connect with people and just, share some good information and see what questions people have. So I'm looking forward to tonight, and I hope it's a really nice interactive experience for everybody who's involved.
Awesome, awesome. So right now we are streaming live on Facebook and also on YouTube and Instagram, I believe. So if there's anyone in the audience that has any questions for us tonight, definitely just let us type your question in the little chat box there, and Lisa will pick that up and answer whatever questions you have in regards to diet and nutrition. Now, just a little bit about Lisa. She is the head dietitian of Southern Maryland Dietitian here in, I believe it's in White Plains, Maryland. And she is a registered and licensed dietitian and certified LEAP therapist. She has now a new team of experienced dietitians that support the practice and provide additional services. They also provide nutrition testing, treatment, and counseling to help people look and feel their best. So again, thanks so much, Lisa, for joining us tonight.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right. So we are going to go ahead and get started with your presentation. I know we'll also have the opportunity to go over some questions anyone in the audience may have at the end. And then I have my list of questions of the most top 10 or, most common nutrition and dietary questions. So Lisa, I do have this one question, and it's something that I get a lot from my patients. In the past, I've referred my clients to you, and they absolutely love you. So definitely thank you for all the great work that you do. But the question that I get a lot is, what is the difference between a dietitian and a nutritionist?
It's a really good question. And there's a couple pieces to this. So in most states and in the United States and some other countries, the term registered dietitian is a super specific term for a healthcare provider that has certain qualifications. So usually it's a bachelor's degree, a supervised internship, and passing a national exam. There's a few other variations to that as well. So it's a very regulated term. It's very specific, but the term nutritionist is a little bit more vague. So there are different nutrition certifications that are available. Some of them are relatively short. Some of them are sort of under a health coach certification. Some of them are master's degrees. There are people who are nutritionists that have PhDs. There are other healthcare providers that are also considered as nutritionists because that's part of their training and their practice. But just the term nutritionist is a little bit not specific. So a nutritionist could be highly qualified or not. So if somebody says they're a nutritionist, it just sort of tells you need to maybe ask more questions if that's the type of provider that's a good fit for you. In Maryland and some other states, people can be a nutritionist with a master's degree and certain supervised experience, and they can also be licensed with the same license that I have as a registered dietitian through the state. So there are areas of overlap and there are areas of difference as well. Okay. But in practice, we do a lot of the same things, and sometimes we also specialize in other areas as well where there's not overlap.
All right, awesome. Thanks for clearing that up. I know that's a question that I hear very often, so it's best to hear from the professional in regards to that. Okay, so so we're going to go ahead and get started here. Now, the listening audience, again, if you have any questions, feel free at any time during the presentation to type in your question in the chat box there. Lisa will be able to view it. I'm just going to be coordinating her presentation on the other end. So we're going to go ahead and get started.
I see the presentation up, so I'll go ahead and get started. Basically, we're just going over today some nutrition basics, sort of nutrition 101. And I'm Lisa Hugh from Southern Maryland Dietitian. We're talking in a real general basis today. This isn't specific medical advice, and the information presented here today might not apply to everybody's specific health needs and goals and preferences. And we definitely know that we're not trying to advocate for one super specific style of nutrition or specific choices. We're just giving an overview tonight. And if you have more specific questions, please definitely ask in the comments. And we can go on to the next slide. All right, so I have this section in here about nutrition noise because this is something I hear so much from my patients. Frequently I meet with patients one-on-one. I ask them, what are your goals? What are you working on? Tell me about your health, your history. How do you normally eat? What does your normal day look like? And we work together to have a plan that sort of falls under this science-based side. So I try to use research as much as possible. I try to make plans that are sustainable for people, utilizing the concept of moderation. So not overdoing or underdoing anything. I try to be really inclusive in terms of patients' preferences, their families, their lifestyle, inclusive in terms of having a lot of foods that they like and enjoy, and a diet that really promotes health. Not a diet that's going to give sort of a quick change, but at the cost of your physical health. The flip side to that is there are a lot of fad diets, quick fixes, things that are really extreme that tell people what not to do, and that only focus on weight, which can be sort of dangerous. So I think it's important to kind of think about those different aspects. Sometimes hearing sort of the popular opinion, like the fad diets and quick fixes and things that are trendy, cause a lot of frustration for people because they can have a really good plan for themselves, either that they've done on their own, that they've done with a healthcare provider. But when they're constantly hearing about just sort of general popular opinion, it can be really distracting from what's specific and good for their health. All right, next slide. So one of the big things in nutrition is water. So I like to go over a few different things with water. Basically, water is needed for everything in our body. Like our metabolism is sort of everything that our body does, and we need water for everything. If we don't have enough water, we can get dehydration, and dehydration can be really dangerous in terms of like safety, passing out, ending up in the emergency room, or having kidney problems. But mild dehydration can also cause problems such as basically we feel hungry if we're a little bit dehydrated. That's the body's signal telling us, go get something. But it can lead to overeating at times. Caffeinated beverages, so coffee, tea, iced tea, sweet tea, can act as a diuretic, basically pulling water off of the body, making your body excrete more water. And so they might not promote hydration as much as what we need. So a lot of people tell me like, oh, I know I should drink more water. I just can't drink water. I don't think about it. So a great strategy is linking water to other behaviors. So an example of that would be every time you get up from your desk, drink a glass of water. Every time you get in the car, carry a bottle of water. Every time you come in the house, wash your hands, drink some water, or drink water right before bed, or as soon as you get up, or after you brush your teeth, drink water before you eat or drink or start doing your normal routine throughout the house. It can be a way of sort of adding structure to your routine when you don't have that internal trigger to drink water. Definitely, it's springtime. People are exercising more. I see everybody outside walking and jogging and doing more things. So with more exercise and then also with more heat, we also need more water. So now's a good time to work on that. Next slide. So fruits and vegetables, this used to be sort of a, just sort of almost felt like kind of like common knowledge that fruits and vegetables are good, but now keto is super popular and people are worried about carbs, and now people are worried that fruits are unhealthy. So it's good to know, sort of more information about fruits and vegetables. And basically, fruits and vegetables are really low in calories and high in nutrients. So high in fiber, high in antioxidants, high in vitamins that we need. And the fiber in fruits and vegetables gives us a feeling of fullness and helps us to regulate our hunger better. Generally speaking, fruits and vegetables are really protective against a lot of diseases such as heart disease, cancer, and hypertension. The nutrients that are in fruits and vegetables, they also help us absorb other nutrients, from other foods that we eat. So for example, tomatoes and oranges are kind of acidic and they have vitamin C that helps us absorb iron from red meat and other animal foods. Depending on specific diets, this might be a little bit different, but generally a serving is about a cup of raw vegetables, a half a cup of cooked vegetables, or like a small handful of fruit. Next slide. So different people have different needs, but these are some things to think about. A good rule of thumb is called strive for 5 first. So trying to have 5 fruits and vegetables, servings throughout the day. Longer term goals might be to increase that between 8 and 13 servings per day. Thinking about that per meal, one of my rules of thumb for most patients is that half of your meals, and by volume, should be fruits or vegetables. So that might look like lunch and dinner could have a quarter of the plate to be a starchy food, so potatoes, sweet potatoes, quinoa. The other quarter of the plate would be a protein food, so like meat, chicken, fish, and then the other half of the plate would be non-starchy vegetables. So that could be like roasted vegetables, it could be raw, it could be cooked vegetables, it could be a salad, it could be all different combinations, and it could also be like a combination dish where everything is cooked together. A good strategy also is to have fruits and vegetables as part of snacks. Sometimes we sort of think of snacks as treats, as something that we want to have just for the enjoyment, but really a snack should be an opportunity for nutrition and to meet our physical needs. So sort of scheduling fruits and vegetables in at snack time is a good strategy. Definitely also thinking about having some fruit with each meal and then 1 to 2 vegetables per meal. And then we have a couple examples, smoothies that say have berries and spinach. A salad that has a lot of vegetables and chicken and fruit is a nice combination. Even if you think about like Chick-fil-A salads or Panera salads, a lot of them have a combination of a fruit, vegetable, and a protein food and some other things in there. And that usually tastes really nice and keeps you full. And it's a good, healthy strategy. Next slide. So of course, protein is sort of a popular nutrition concept. Most of my patients think that they need a lot more protein than what they actually do. And so with protein, basically it's super important. We need protein for a lot of reasons, but we don't really need to overdo it either. So protein helps us feel full. It helps with muscle repair, helps with our metabolism. It also helps with our immune system. Too much protein, though, can be a tax to the kidneys. It can also just cause us to eat more calories and more dietary fat than what we need if we go overboard. We also can get protein from plant-based sources as well as animal-based sources. So plant sources of protein are pictured here. So like peas, beans, lentils, and then on the animal foods, chicken, turkey, fish. Generally speaking, we should somewhat limit our red meats and processed meat products. Next slide. So thinking about protein goals, I think it's a good strategy to think about plant-based proteins sort of first when you're thinking about meal planning, to think, okay, strategically, how can I plan some beans or some peas into my menu for the week? Do I want to cook some soup? Do I want to have rice and peas? Do I want to have chili? So that it doesn't sort of get overlooked. Beans can also go in salads. It's a really good way to sort of make a salad feel more filling and more satisfying. Portion size of beans generally is something around like a palm-sized portion, about a half a cup. That's usually really satisfying, goes good with a lot of meals, and digests pretty well. They can be cooked, they can be baked, they can be broiled, they can be grilled, they can be sort of like canned beans, just sort of rinsed out of a can and put onto a salad. They can be done definitely in a lot of ways. And some people really like to have one meatless day or meal per week. It can just be a strategy to boost the intake of the nutrients that are also contained in those foods. Next slide. So dietary fat, this one is healthy fats are sort of more popular right now. Back, say, like 15, 20 years ago, low-fat diets were a lot more popular, and fat was sort of considered as like dangerous and unhealthy and associated with heart disease. Now, I think people are more accepting of having dietary fat, and especially with keto diets being more popular, the mindset has sort of shifted. But for most diets, a low or moderate amount of dietary fats is usually advised. And the type of fat definitely matters also. So the first bullet point here is choosing fats from like monounsaturated and polyunsaturated fats can provide a lot of benefits for heart health and other conditions. They're generally anti-inflammatory, so can help with like pain. They can help with brain health and disease prevention. Good examples of dietary fats that we should actively be choosing are nuts, seeds, avocados, and olive oil. And definitely the portion size matters. So generally speaking, fats are more concentrated in calories, so we don't want to overdo it. Just a little bit goes a long way in terms of making our diets nourishing, taste good, and practical. And then we should generally be avoiding fried foods, trans fats, and saturated fats, or limiting them. We wouldn't want to necessarily avoid that completely. Next slide. So sometimes it's practical to have like a goal for building in these healthy fats into our diets. The serving sizes here might vary a little bit depending on each person's calorie needs or sometimes on digestive concerns. But some strategies are to eliminate or reduce the amount or the frequency of fried foods, and then adding in like a serving of nuts and seeds every day. So that can be done at a snack time. That can be done through a smoothie. And then cooking in olive oil. Olive oil works really well for a lot of like sauteing, for salads, for roasting. It doesn't really work great for frying foods, but if we're reducing the fried foods, that can be a way of just kind of having more opportunity to have the olive oil. Next slide. And then smart carbs. So carbs are kind of like the scary nutrient right now. A lot of people are trying to cut carbs or eliminate carbs. Thinking about low carb diets, Atkins, keto, those are definitely popular right now. But if somebody's not following those diets specifically, then we should still be thinking of how to have carbohydrates and carbohydrate containing foods in our diet on a regular basis. So definitely not talking about low carb diets, but generally speaking, these whole grain foods and other starchy carbohydrate foods aren't overly processed. So that requires our digestive tract to do the refining process. So it's good for our digestive tract to do that. It helps us have better digestive health. It helps us absorb more nutrients. And then these carbohydrates provide fiber, B vitamins. They also help us to feel really full and satisfied. And they also play a role sort of with our brain health and brain chemistry, helping us have a sense of satisfaction and comfort and sort of knowing that, we've eaten enough. It helps us to regulate our internal hunger cues. So sometimes when people are thinking about carbs, they're thinking about sort of overly processed foods, but it's important to think about other less processed foods that contain complex carbohydrates. So examples of that would be like quinoa, barley, couscous, bulgur, oats. Also like potatoes, sweet potatoes, plantains would be in there as well. So next slide. So some people like to have some carbohydrate goals. A good goal is definitely to avoid refined grains. So that would be like white flour, white bread products. So like biscuits or tortillas that are made out of a refined white flour. A strategy could be to try a new grain or a new complex carbohydrate food each week or each time you go to the grocery store. And generally a serving size is about a half a cup of a cooked grain. So depending on what your calorie and energy needs are, you might have more than one portion per meal, but for the most part, 1/2 of a cup would be equivalent to the same calories as like a slice of bread. Next slide. So timing of meals is definitely an interesting topic, and I've noticed that timing varies a lot from person to person, depending on work schedule, exercise schedule, and sort of how frequently people get hungry. But a couple things to think about is metabolism generally slows down if you go more than 5 to 6 hours without eating. Also, not having breakfast generally leads people to eat more calories throughout the day because the hunger is never really satisfied, and so there's more snacking, and then there's a much more greater tendency to eat a much larger dinner or many snacks after dinner if the breakfast wasn't like consistently in place. Sometimes carbohydrates closer to bedtime can promote fat storage, and then sometimes eating like protein before bed can sort of prevent that. That's also like highly individualized, and especially depending on exercise schedules. Timing of meals for exercise is a big one. So generally, exercising on an empty stomach causes you to burn less calories. This does kind of vary person to person. Sometimes eating and then exercising just doesn't feel good, so that's a consideration as well. Next slide. So when I'm working with patients, sometimes we set specific goals related to timing of meals. I like to have patients eating generally every 3 to 4 hours and have breakfast within an hour of waking up. And then thinking about the timing of the nutrients, having healthy, like a protein or dietary fat, sort of after dinner or before bed can be a good strategy. And then definitely adding a carbohydrate snack either before or after exercise. So like if you eat lunch and then you're going to go to the gym before dinner, you probably would need a snack before going to the gym. Or if you have dinner, then go to the gym or then exercise, you probably need a carbohydrate snack after the gym and the exercise. Next slide. So it's really hard to talk about nutrition without talking about exercise. Also, the two sort of go hand in hand. I talk to people sort of all day, every day about what's the best exercise. And really it comes down to what do you enjoy and what can you do safely and what can you do without, adding a lot of stress or burden to your day and to your routine. So whatever you're able to do is probably the best thing to do. Some other pieces of information to go along with that is we should generally be having well-rounded exercise plans that include some cardio, strength training, and flexibility training. That helps sort of, they balance each other out and help give the most benefits to the body and prevent injury. So with cardio, some strategies include incorporating intervals, so doing kind of like short bursts of higher intensity and then alternating with lower intensity. So that might be like jogging for 1 minute and walking for 5 minutes. It sort of keeps the heart rate up and burning more calories. Strength training can be weightlifting. It can be using your body weights. It can be using exercise bands, other things along those lines. And basically that helps to promote muscle growth and retention and then help your body to burn more calories when you're not exercising. And then flexibility, that can fall under just general stretching, yoga, Pilates. Those types of activities help to prevent injuries and soreness and helps to decrease your risk of falls later in life. Next slide. So again, a lot of our work as dietitians is very goal-oriented. So some goals could be sort of assessing what your current exercise routine is, and then increasing the frequency by 1 day per week. So if you're normally exercising twice a week, a good goal could be, for the next month, I'm going to exercise 3 times a week. The next month could be 4 times per week, and sort of go up. Longer term goals would be 30 to 60 minutes of cardio, physical activity, 4 to 6 days a week, and then 2 to 3 days of strength training or weight training per week. Those exercises are usually a little bit shorter unless you're really trying to build muscle. And then flexibility should be added in there as well. Some people just do a little bit of stretching every day, or it could be doing a yoga class like once or twice per week. Next slide. And then generally speaking, for goals, I think it's really important to review your goals daily, very frequently, so they're right in front of you and they can inform how you make choices throughout the day. Sharing goals with a friend or healthcare provider is wonderful. I have a lot of patients who have accountability partners, either they might be friends, it might be colleagues. That's very helpful as well. And then, of course, it's good to always come back and reevaluate your progress. Sometimes we make goals and they seem like a wonderful idea. It seems like it's practical and it's going to work. But in real life, it just doesn't work out for one reason or another. So coming back and reevaluating, was the goal a good goal? Should I modify it? Should I increase it? Should I decrease it? Should I go about it differently? Is really helpful. And one thing I always tell my patients is we're not going for perfection, and we know there's going to be bumps in the road. So always coming back and reevaluating is super important to seeing, progress for any area of your health. And then definitely don't be stagnant. This is, for most of us, these are sort of like lifelong goals to be healthy and work on our health and nutrition and fitness. So we should always be sort of actively working on some aspect of it. Next slide. Oh, that's the last one. Oh, all right. So, yep, we finished all the slides, and I didn't see any questions pop up in there. I don't know if you can see any questions or comments.
So yes, I do have a question that popped up from Lindsay on Facebook. Lindsay asks, any suggestions for a child that refuses to eat fruit and veggies, especially if he has special needs?
Special needs. Okay, that's a really good question. So there's a couple things I would say for that. First, there's a book called, I think it's called Helping Your Child with Extreme Picky Eating. I don't know if we can post a link to it somewhere. I know it's on Amazon. It's like a $10 book, but it's amazing to kind of go through all the different reasons why a child might have problems with specific foods. So sometimes it's texture, sometimes it's behavioral, sometimes it has to do with family dynamics. It could be, just different developmental stages. There could be different like muscular problems. So there's a lot of reasons why a child might have like a resistance to eating fruits and vegetables. So I think that book is probably one of the best ones to sort of go through all the options.
Can you repeat that book again? I'm going to put it in the chat. So that
I think it's called Helping Your Child with Extreme Picky Eating.
And it can be purchased in Amazon, right?
Yep. And I know it has like a purple cover, if that helps people find it.
All right. So I will include that information in the chat here.
Awesome. So that's a really good one. Sometimes certain specialists are needed. So sometimes kids will work with like a registered dietitian. Sometimes there are like therapists. So I guess sort of like a family therapist. And then also speech therapists and pediatricians are sort of the main caregivers that are sometimes supportive in those areas. But on a real general basis, a lot of kids sort of even outside of like special needs or like a physical functioning challenge, a lot of times kids are resistant to eating things that have a different flavor, a different texture, a different appearance. So a really good strategy for parents is to offer these foods continually, but in a low stress way, and having the kids sort of involved in the food, but without the pressure to eat it, because adding a stress to a situation that's already challenging is just going to make it even more challenging. So I'll give you an example of my kids that are not really picky eaters, but for a while they went through a spell of they would not eat hardly any vegetables. So at their daycare, they would eat carrots. They would eat the baby carrots, the ranch dressing, kind of all day, every day. But at home, no vegetables. So I went to their school and asked, like, okay, what carrots are these? What ranch dressing is this? Where can I get it? I bought it. I put it at home. No carrots. So, this sort of went on for a while. And then I said, okay, let me think about my training. Like, how would I go about this? So every time we went to the store, we would just sort of pass through the produce section. Like, oh, okay, they just get a chance to look at different vegetables. If they were interested in something, we could look at it. If they wanted to pick up a vegetable, they could pick up a vegetable. If they had a little bit of interest, I would tell them, like, oh, okay, you can pick out a vegetable. Pick out one thing that you want. They always went to these carrots. They were buying every version of carrots that you could imagine. Like, they wanted carrots, but at home, they wouldn't eat it. It probably was like over a course of 2 years that then one of them picked out the shredded carrots, like what would go into a coleslaw or like a cabbage or like a carrot salad. And so they love to then sprinkle these shredded carrots on their food. So they're eating mashed potatoes. They want the shredded carrots on top of that. If I would have forced them to eat carrots at the beginning of this process, they never would have eaten them. It would have just been a disaster and they would hate carrots. But sort of this long game of just being involved with vegetables led to them eating more vegetables. And it was sort of a similar process for many fruits and vegetables. So I would just sort of have them in the kitchen. Can you hand me the apple? Can you rinse the apple? Can you cut the apple? Can you put the apple on the table? Sometimes just these exposures without the pressure of eating it helps the food just be more familiar. So when they're ready, then it's not like a scary food and it's not a high pressure situation.
Yeah. And I know one thing that's worked with both my kids is every spring we choose different vegetables or fruit to grow.
Oh,
So
nice.
actually having them grow their own fruit and vegetables, they were happy to actually enjoy the fruits of their labor, right? So they're constantly watering and taking care of these veggies and fruit. And then when it's a time to eat them, they're excited. So I know that's what's worked with my kids, is actually having them grow the fruit and vegetables. They're more than happy to eat it.
That's fun. That sounds really fun.
Yeah, that definitely works. All right. So Lindsay, I hope that answered your question. I do have another question from Miss Stacy, who posted a question on Facebook. So she's asking about intermittent fasting. What are your thoughts on intermittent fasting?
Okay, so I guess I sort of have mixed thoughts on that. I know it's a fantastic strategy for some people, and some people have really good results with it, and it works well for them, sort of like their schedule, their nutrition, their physical health, their mental health. It can be really good. The flip side is some people do really, really poorly with it for a lot of reasons. I think there's a big genetic factor to it. I'm not certain about it, but that's sort of my personal hunch, that some people just feel terrible. They feel depressed, they feel moody, they feel starving, they don't feel good, they never sort of get over the adjustment period. Some women particularly do really poorly with it, like it throws off their thyroid, it throws off their cycles, they just don't feel well, or it just becomes like such a stress and a burden. So I think it's really sort of an individual choice. If it seems like something that might be beneficial, it possibly could be if it's planned out well. For if someone has tried it and it just doesn't seem like a good fit for them, I really just tell them, don't worry about it. If it was helping you, you probably would start to feel, you would see some benefits. And if you're not seeing benefits, let's just kind of back off on it. There is a book on intermittent fasting. It was written by a dietitian that I know. Her name is Jean Lamantia. I can't remember the exact name of the book, but it's kind of like Guide to Intermittent Fasting, which it sort of shows different schedules, different types, different options, and it kind of gives like samples of timing and meals. So I kind of like that because it helps. I like that it's written on a piece of paper and you can sort of see a visual of how that works. And it also kind of gives examples, like if you're traveling or if you work different schedules, what does that look like? Because everybody's schedule of fasting doesn't look the same.
Right. So I guess one thing to understand about, diet and nutrition is that it's not a one size fits all, right? So you got to kind of figure out what works well for you and your lifestyle, and what works for one person may not work for the next. I mean, we're dealing with, two totally different people. So I think that's one thing that I always emphasize, even with my patients, that, because it worked for your girlfriend doesn't mean that it's going to necessarily work for you. And really just trying to find something that's sustainable, right? So just like you mentioned earlier in the presentation, we really want to get away from the quick fixes and the fad diets and things that, will get us maybe fast results. But in the end, in long term, is it really, improving your health, right? So that's ultimately what we want to achieve is better health.
Yes. And so, I mean, the fasting is a great example of that, because for some people, it could be sustainable. They could feel wonderful with it. It could work great for their personal schedule, for their family schedule, for their work schedule. For other people, it could just be a huge chore and burden. So definitely individualized.
Just kind of see what works well for you and go from there. Yes, absolutely. So any other, you're welcome, Stacy. Glad you could get that question answered for you. So is there any other questions from the audience in regards to diet or nutrition? We have our dietitian, Lisa Hugh, on tonight, joining us again. So if there's any questions that you have, I know I have a few for you, Lisa. So we'll wait for more people to kind of put some more questions in the chat. But here at As a Health Center, I do medical weight loss, holistic health. I definitely emphasize a lot about diet, exercise, lifestyle modification, stress management. These are all things that are kind of incorporated into, improving your health and wellness. So there's always this common thread of questions that I get. And I know you as a dietitian, you get a lot of questions that a lot of people tend to have. So one thing in particular I get a lot of questions about, and I'm sure you do as well, is, what is the best diet to go by, right? And again, it kind of comes back to what works for you individually. But the most popular diets now that we're hearing about is, the vegan and keto diet. What is generally the kind of the best way to eat in your opinion? And what are your, opinions on adopting a vegan eating lifestyle or a keto eating lifestyle?
Yeah, that's such a good question. And it's sort of like what I said with the exercise, that sort of the best diet is the diet that you can follow. There was actually some big study that sort of looked at all these other studies of diets to figure out which one was really the most healthy for people and what had the best outcomes. And the answer was sort of whatever diet people would stick with was the healthiest diet for them. So it's kind of like an answer and not an answer at the same time. So for some of these diets, they're sort of considered as sort of like lifestyle diets, because there's a lot of personal preference that goes into them. It can have to do with your sort of ethical beliefs or cultural beliefs. It's not always based just sort of on your physical healthcare needs as a therapeutic diet. So a therapeutic diet might be a low sodium diet for blood pressure, or a carbohydrate controlled diet for diabetes. So there's sort of some overlap, but some differences too between a therapeutic diet and a preference type of diet. They can look similar. Sometimes they're interchangeable. So it can be kind of a gray area. So for a lot of those things, I think it really depends on what are your reasons for wanting to adopt these diets. So sometimes I have people that want to have a keto diet and vegan and fasting and low sodium and not processed and paleo, and they sort of want all the benefits, but they really don't want what the diet actually is. So I think sometimes it just sort of depends on your motivation. And if someone has a really strong motivation that they have I really want to have a vegan diet because of environmental impact or animal rights, or just sort of the concept of consuming animal products doesn't agree with them, if they have a really strong belief, then they can build their diet around that. But if that's not really their goal or their preference, they just want to be healthy, then I don't think people have to adopt that type of diet. But generally speaking, if someone doesn't have a really strong preference and is just looking for an overall healthy diet, then I'm thinking about things like, are all food groups present? Is there enough fiber? Is there enough nutrients? Are the protein, fat, and carbohydrates sort of balanced? Do the meals look good and taste good? Are they like affordable and practical to have? So those are sort of the main considerations when I'm thinking about what's a healthy diet or what's the best diet. It's super individualized, but it has sort of some commonalities.
Right. So there's some universal things to look for. So you want high nutrient foods that are easily accessible, affordable, kind of taking a more practical approach to it. So I do have a question from the audience. Sandra, she's asking, will the keto diet be a good diet if you have high cholesterol?
So that one is a tough one. There's definitely a genetic component. So some people with high cholesterol can do wonderful on a keto diet. Some people will end up having a much higher cholesterol level. So I don't particularly offer this testing, but there are some lab testings that kind of look at a person's genetics and give an idea of, is that a good diet for that individual person? If that's not possible, I definitely recommend people checking with their doctor first. Like, is it safe for me to try this? Can we check my blood work sort of before I start? And then maybe a month or 2 or 3 months into it to make sure that I'm doing okay and that this is safe for me. So kind of having that closer monitoring is a good strategy. And then also thinking about, there's sort of a well-planned, well-intentioned keto diet. And then there's what I call sort of the gas station keto diet. So most keto diets they're supposed to be low in carbohydrates. So usually below 25 or 50 grams of carbohydrates per day, moderate in protein. So not super high. It might be like 3 ounces of a protein food per meal, and then high in vegetables, high in sort of like the healthy fats. But what I see is sort of the gas station keto is that people are getting like bacon, pepperoni, cheese, eggs, deli meat, and not maybe some iceberg lettuce. And they're not really thinking about the healthy fats that should be included. They're not getting the fiber from the vegetables that they should be including. And the meats tend to be like very processed. So that style of keto diet, I would definitely not advocate pretty much for anybody, but definitely if there's a cholesterol or heart disease issue. But the other sort of more well-planned keto diet, it's a possibility.
I see. So we have another question from the audience. Stacy asks, what's a good diet when you are menopausal?
Okay, that's a good question too. So with menopause, sometimes a lot of different symptoms can come into play. So usually what I'm thinking about is how can we have the meals that are sort of well-balanced, not overly high in calories, but not too restrictive either, because I think I see for a lot of women who are like menopausal or premenopausal, it sort of seems the weight's really sluggish. It's hard to lose weight. There's a lot of stress also. So I see a lot of women really under eating, skipping meals, or having really low calorie, low carbohydrate meals. And then it becomes unsustainable. It can happen daily or it can happen occasionally. I see this like it's easy to undereat during the day when you're busy and working and taking care of kids and taking care of family and doing errands. And then at the end of the day, coming home hungry, starving, tired, stressed, your boss got on your nerves, there's somebody else giving trouble, there's traffic and all these things. And then coming home and like chips, candy, wine, cocktail, overeating, tired, don't exercise. So I really, really encourage like good balanced meals, consistent meals, generally lower in fat meals, and high fiber meals tend to help a lot because sometimes there's a lot of like hormonal changes. And so making sure there's enough dietary fiber at that time really kind of helps keep the hormones like processed well in the body. So that would sort of look like similar meals like what I was mentioning earlier, where the meal would be like half vegetables, a quarter protein, and a quarter of a complex carbohydrate.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yep.
So, yeah. Great questions from the audience. I definitely appreciate everyone's participation. There's a lot of guesswork for a lot of people in regards to, what to eat, what's good, what's bad, what's healthy for you, what's not so healthy. And of course, it kind of even depends like what generation we're in, right? So what was popular, 5 years ago, now we've got something else, something new. So I know one thing that a lot of people are concerned about is, uh, different types of food and in what form it comes in, organic versus, non-GMO versus, people want to kind of avoid any genetically modified food or anything that has preservatives or hormones. You go to the grocery store and you see grass-fed, meat versus, highly processed, antibiotic-filled type of, different type of meat. So we want to kind of know what the science is behind, is it more healthier to go organic? Is it more healthier to go with non-GMO food? Does it really matter? So what are your opinions on the whole organic or non-GMO food?
So this is a really good question too. The science for a lot of these things is sort of mixed, so it's hard to say this is definitely better or this is definitely worse across the board for sort of a whole category of foods or a whole like class, a whole group of food or a whole style of food. So generally speaking, I encourage sort of more of the less processed, more organic, less preservatives, more whole foods as much as possible, because I think there's sort of like less risk in that, because some of these other preservatives and processing methods, the science is a little bit unclear, so we don't 100% know. But in practice, I see when people are eating a lot more processed food, more preservatives, they tend to have more heart disease, more problems with like calcification in the blood vessels, more sort of digestive problems, more skin problems. So it also sort of has to be a practical decision, because sometimes when you get into more and more organic, grass-fed, less processed, it can also be more costly and more inconvenient, especially if you're looking like at produce and things. So that is sort of a consideration as well, because I don't want people to feel that they have to have these 100% organic, unprocessed food and that they can't eat other things, and then they end up not eating fruits and vegetables at all. So the bottom line is kind of like fed is best, but if you can, those other things are probably better, but it shouldn't be a deal breaker. And then I guess two also important considerations in there is sometimes people have a perception that if something is organic or it's gluten-free or has a certain health label, that it definitely has like way more vitamins or that it has lower calories. That's not necessarily true. Those nutrient levels are generally about the same. So when people are sort of asking the question of which is healthier, healthy is kind of a vague, broad term. So sometimes it depends, what's that person's individual goals. So I'll give you a good example of that. Like I had a patient one time who I was trying to get him to eat a whole grain pasta versus the white processed pasta, because it's a little bit higher in fiber. It has a little bit of protein, has more vitamins. It digests more slowly. It's better for digestion, has a lot of these benefits to it. But he was in the grocery store and he called me on the phone like, Lisa, why are you telling me to buy this thing that's $3 when I could buy the one that's $1 and the calories are the same, the carbohydrates are the same. This is just ridiculous. And I had to tell him like, that part is true. It is the same grams of carbohydrates, it is the same calories per serving. But the more processed one, you're missing out on some of the nutrients that you still need. So it's not always that every feature of that is going to be better.
Right. So yeah, speaking of like essential nutrients, I know the standard American diet, right? Whatever this quote unquote standard is.
Right.
I've often heard it said that the standard American diet tends to be, not as high in essential nutrients that it should be. So would you recommend that we take, daily multivitamins to basically supplement the nutrients that we may be lacking in our diet?
Yeah. So I always sort of say food first. If you have a really bad diet and you take a multivitamin, you know, that's not really like a guarantee of health or not having some kind of problem. It's probably better than not taking it, but the diet sort of is the first line of treatment or prevention. But for the most part, I think taking a multivitamin is usually a good idea, but it's definitely worth checking with your healthcare provider first, because sometimes certain medications or medical conditions would be a contraindication. So even though a multivitamin is usually super safe and well tolerated, it's just always better to double check first.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we've got about 10 minutes left to our webcast tonight. Anyone else in the audience has any nutrition or diet related questions? We have our dietitian, Lisa Hugh, here tonight. So I know, Lisa, you see a lot of clients come into your office. So say I'm a new client, new patient, and I want to kind of get back on track with healthy eating and a healthy lifestyle, and I'm wanting to say, transition into a vegan lifestyle. Is that something that you could help me with?
Definitely. So normally what I do when I'm working with patients, especially for the first time, is I really ask a lot of questions to get to know them sort of on a personal level, and then also sort of get a better understanding of their physical health and sort of what their goals are and where they are. Like, I ask people, tell me your story. So just tell me like what's happening health wise, body wise, life, like what questions do you have? And then I go through and I ask them, like, what are your medical diagnoses? What are your symptoms? What are your medications, your supplements? But I want to hear people's story of themselves. And then I also ask them, tell me about your daily routine. I want to know, do you get up at 4 o'clock in the morning? Do you get up at 10 o'clock in the morning? Is somebody else cooking your meals? Are you cooking? Who are you cooking for? Who's doing the grocery shopping? What are like the stressful parts of your day? How do you even think about your meals? Is it like planned out a week ahead of time? Is it on the fly? So all those things are really important to thinking about making a change. So if someone wanted to transition to a vegan diet, having that background information would help me give suggestions of how to do that. So if somebody is, cooking 99% of their meals at home and want a vegan diet, that looks really different than somebody who, like works 2 jobs and eats out and is kind of like eating while driving. The strategies to put that in place would be really different.
Right, right. So essentially, it's better to get kind of, more individualized guidance as opposed to just going on the internet and seeing what someone posted and what worked for them, right? So like you as a dietitian, you'll be able to, based on, my lifestyle and preferences and my day-to-day routine, even what I can afford, right, would come into play in regards to what individualized plan that you would create for me. So to see you as a client, does it require me to get like a referral from a like my doctor or from some other specialist, or can I just kind of call you up and make an appointment?
Yeah, so I would definitely encourage patients to just sort of like go to our website. It's southernmarylanddietitian.com. There's information on there about insurance plans that we're in network with, which ones require a referral. Most patients can just go ahead and just schedule directly online, and then we'll be in touch in terms of some specifics. But most patients don't need a referral. It's helpful if they have it. It's helpful if they have any copies of their medical records, but it's not required for most insurance plans. And the ones that are required, we definitely will let you know. But for the most part, most of our patients are self-referrals and don't have to sort of go through their healthcare provider in the first place. But we definitely welcome when people do that. We try to get back in touch with the doctor's offices and share information or We often make recommendations like, hey, when you have your next doctor's office, or when you see your provider, ask these questions, or see if you can get this lab work done. So we try to take a teamwork approach. But we also try to not have barriers and try to making an appointment as easy as possible, within the setup of the insurance systems.
Okay, so it's dependent. Yeah, because I think it makes a lot more sense for people to just come directly to you once they do want to transition into like a vegan lifestyle or keto dietary regimen. Are there times when a person may come in with the intent to want to start a certain dietary plan and you kind of let them know that may not necessarily work for their lifestyle, or they may, try it with you and you kind of realize early on it doesn't work?
Yep, that probably happens a lot.
Yeah.
So sometimes people feel pressured to follow a certain diet a certain way, and they don't realize they can do it in a different way. So I know we were kind of talking about, is it, better to kind of get help, individualized help, versus looking at something on the internet. So I love looking at things on the internet. I put things on the internet. I think it's a great way to share ideas and resources. But I always tell people, what you see on somebody's website or blog or Pinterest or social media, it's what their specialty is. It's what their preference is. It's what works for them in their household. It might not work for you, but you can learn from that. You can implement things. And sometimes people sort of have an idea of something, but they don't have the full information. So they might really like the idea of a vegan diet, for example. Like I had one patient who he was following all these vegan bloggers, vegan YouTubes, and he was loving the recipes. He was loving the food. He was loving all the flavors. But he also really wanted to have lamb chops and fried chicken in his diet. And then he felt very conflicted, like, but I want to be a vegan, but why do I not have to have the fried chicken? And so in the end, it was sort of a thing of what he really wanted was a less processed diet. He wanted more home cooked foods. He wanted more flavorful foods. And he wanted a lot of plant foods in his diet, which are very nourishing. But he really didn't have like a religious or a moral or a strong philosophical preference for a fully vegan diet. So, his diet would sort of fall under, it could be sort of like mainly plant-based with some animal foods in there, or we could say this was sort of a less processed diet or a whole foods diet. It sort of fell into like a Mediterranean diet, kind of. It didn't have to be super specific. But that was sort of a big thing that we talked about, because he really had this label in his mind that he wanted a vegan diet. But what he really, really wanted was not that exactly.
And I guess sometimes it takes trial and error, to realize, this doesn't quite fit me, or, even doing a modified version of
absolutely
a known diet. So I guess that's always the idea there. So yeah, I mean, if there's any other questions tonight from the audience, I think this is great, very helpful, and I hope folks are learning and understanding a few things about the benefits of getting guidance from a professional, a dietitian in particular, to help you get started on your health goals. I know, Lisa, you've been here in the Southern Maryland region for some time now. You recently expanded your office. You have a few new nutrition and dietary specialists that has joined you. Is that correct?
Yes, I sure did. I have, so we have like a health coach who's in the office once a week doing body composition testing. And we have 3 other dietitians who are licensed in Maryland and seeing patients. We're doing all virtual nutrition appointments. And I'm really excited to have these other dietitians on board, because we all have different specialties. So between all of us, we cover a lot of diagnosis, a lot of conditions, a lot of experience in different healthcare settings. So when patients are interested in appointments, we try to find who's going to be, a really good fit for them in terms of their clinical needs, their personality, their schedule, availability, all those things. We try to make, really good fits so that people have good experiences. And then we do have a teamwork situation. So if one of us, needs other ideas or resources, we all support each other. So that's like a really nice benefit to add for patients.
Absolutely. So everyone has their knowledge base and specialty that they can contribute to helping their clients out. I know we have another question that popped up from Stacy. She's asking, where do I get the genetic testing for foods that work well? So is that something that you do? Any type of like food testing or genetic testing specific to a particular diet?
Yeah. So it depends. There's a couple ones that I do offer. So I do testing for food sensitivities. That's more if people think they're having like reactions to foods that are not a classic food allergy. Sometimes that's done with like digestive disorder, thyroid disorders, skin problems. We also do some genetic testing that helps people figure out what are the best like calorie levels and macronutrient needs. There is different genetic testing that sort of looks more at the keto and heart disease and those things. So if someone's interested in that, they could send me a message. I can try to find out who would offer that. I just don't have that information in front of me right now.
All right. Yeah. So thanks so much, guys, for the great questions, and thank you, Lisa, for providing such great knowledge in regards to nutrition and diet. So important. I feel like we can do like a whole series just on nutrition to talk because it's just so much. And I think it's a great idea for people to seek the advice and guidance of a professional when it comes to their health and wellness. Don't always go by what you see out on the internet. So I guess tell us how can people get in touch with you or schedule a consultation. I know I did put your website up in the chat window. So that's southernmarylanddietitian.com. Is that right?
Yep, that's right. So yeah, going through the website's the easiest thing. There's you can email us directly through the website. You can send our phone number, a text message number is listed on there. You can send a message there. We also encourage patients just to schedule directly online. So basically it comes to us as an appointment request, and then we send you back more information and forms to complete. And then, we can be in touch to coordinate the appointment. And if you have questions, just definitely, reach us through the website, call us, text, email, schedule online, and, we'll help you out.
All right, awesome. And I understand just one last thing that you do virtual visits. Is that right?
Yep. We're doing most of our visits right now are virtual, so it's really convenient for people that they don't have to leave their kids, they don't have to leave their jobs. They can schedule, before work, after work, on their breaks. We actually have Saturday appointments now and some evening appointments. So we're trying to make access to nutrition care just easy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's awesome. So yeah, I think, certainly if there's anyone in the audience, anyone who lives in the Southern Maryland region, they can reach out to Southern Maryland Dietitian headed by Miss Lisa Hugh that joins us tonight. I did want to, there was another question that I had for you. Hopefully it'll come back. But essentially, I want to thank you so much for, providing the really vital information for us. That I got my question back. To do a virtual visit with you because I know I have a lot of people in the audience who are in different states. So say like DC or Virginia or even further, are you seeing clients out of state? And if there were clients that maybe wanted to pay out of pocket, is that an option as well?
Yeah. So it goes by the rules of the state. So some of us are licensed in different states, and some states don't require licensure. So it really just depends on the state where the person is located. So if people are interested out of state, they can definitely reach us. And if we can help them, then we'll do our best to do that. And if it's not a good fit, I have like a big network of other dietitians who do similar services in other states. So I'm glad to connect them as well.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. Thank you everyone for joining us tonight.
Yeah. For all the great questions.
Lisa, I love. Yes, I love having you. I know when we, I guess it was last year or a couple of years ago before the pandemic, when you would come into my office and we'd have, real people,
Right, real
in our
people in the
audience.
audience.
But this is right. Yeah, this is our new way of getting the information out there. So thank you so much,
I
and
love it.
thanks everyone. Um, I know. Oh, let's see. So I do have another question that came in. Do you have a second to answer?
Absolutely.
Okay. So I have a question. Okay. So they keep popping in, so I just want to make sure. So there's someone that says that she was struggling with weight loss. She had gained a lot of weight after having a hysterectomy and struggling to get it under control. So I know that's something that I see with a lot of my patients as well, who've had hysterectomies, and the weight gain has really been an issue for them. So what is, and again, I guess it comes back to that question, that came earlier about menopause and diet and how you should modify. So if you could possibly uh, reconnect that question here.
Yeah. So in cases like that, I really think about having consistent, balanced meals, knowing the body is going through a lot of changes. So sometimes part of the strategy is looking at the long term and monitoring things over a longer period of time. Sometimes, we're human beings and we want things, we want to know that what we're doing is worthwhile. So sometimes starting something, you might not see the benefit for kind of like weeks or months, but it takes time to sort of build up and see the difference. So sometimes the process is tracking different changes in terms of like body measurements or body composition, like similar to the testing that you do in your office. Sometimes we have to get creative with, coordinating with like the primary care provider, with the gynecologist in terms of like hormone levels. Sometimes exercise needs are different. Sometimes there's also that stress management piece. So sometimes, when there's a big health change, we have to look at a lot of different angles. But on the nutrition side, we're really thinking about having enough calories, but not too much, and having the calories and the meals really match with the exercise routine.
Right, right. Yeah, that's so essential. And I think the coordination with other specialists that the patient is working with is important as well. So yeah, so is there a phone number that people can contact you directly?
Absolutely. They can either call or text 240-210-9725.
And can you repeat that one more time so I can actually type that into the chat here?
Absolutely. It's 240-210-9725.
9725. Okay. So that is the direct number to Southern Maryland Dietitian. So they can call or text this number, correct?
Absolutely. And definitely, leave a detailed message if we don't answer. We'll definitely get back in touch.
All right. Excellent. Thank you so much, Lisa. All right. So last chance to answer any questions from the audience. I know new questions keep popping up here. But of course, we're going to leave the website and the phone number for Southern Maryland Dietitian to where you can reach Lisa if you do have any particular questions or things that you want to ask. There's definitely still a way to be able to reach out to her. So thank you all for joining us tonight again for the third time, Lisa. Thank you. And yeah, everyone, just definitely, if you want to find out more about As a Health Center and what we do, you can visit our website at www.theasaway.com. That's THEEZEWAY.com. You can also find us on YouTube. I think we have a couple of our older presentations that I've done with Lisa on the topic of diet and nutrition. It's still up there, and amongst other webcasts that we've done in the past. So thank you all for joining us tonight. Everyone have a great evening. Bye-bye.
Bye.